Hello, you're on the CXO Disrupt series on Echelon, and today we're discussing why a cloud-first strategy is important for any modern organization. And in the studio with us are Ramesh Shanmuganathan, who is Chief Executive Officer at Keells IT. Ramesh, welcome. And also Asela Perera, who's Group Chief Information Officer at Dialog Axiata. So Ramesh, Asela, great to have you here on Echelon. Ramesh, let's start with you, right? Now, you hold two CXO titles. You are Chief Information Officer at the Keells Group, a very diversified business. You're also CEO of Keells IT, right? So you have a couple of perspectives here at least, right? If you take a high-level view, Ramesh, why is a cloud-first strategy crucial for an organization that wants to be relevant in today's world?
Right. I think, Shamil, it's, if we kind of wind back about, say, 20, 30 years, we started kind of dwelling with internet about the early 90s from the Sri Lankan perspective, right? And I think successively with the internet coming into being, you have seen technology revolution has been also keeping or accelerating significantly. And I think we've seen multiple inflection points due to that, right? Now, we saw the dot-com bubble, then we saw the device proliferation, mobiles especially. And with that, we also saw a lot of the compute and storage getting centralized, right? So we started seeing data centers,
Sure,
right? So to speak. So if you look at Kees, we kind of built the first purpose-built data center was in 2003, when we kind of went for SAP. We started aggregating stuff. We started connecting the entire offices with SLT on MPLS. So what we did was we in fact built a private cloud, right? Because we had a data center, compute storage, centralized all our requirements, and then looked at how do we then connect the constituents to do what we wanted to do as an organization. But then what also did happen is parallelly, you saw there were people who were experts at just doing the things at scale. That was the public cloud, right? The telcos, the big IT providers. So then what also happened was the cost economics for a captive organization like Keells to build, serve, and sustain that is a challenge, right? So that is where we then started looking at the options from a Keells perspective. As early as in 2009-10, we looked at, okay, what is the next wave that we need to do? Because if you look at when we invest in CapEx, you're tying up your investment as well as in technology for at least a 5 to 6 year period, right? That also inhibits you in terms of leapfrogging any technology add-ons which comes during that period. You're unable to embrace,
Sure.
right? So I think that's where I feel cloud-first strategy today is important, because today technology, the window of technological advantage is shortening 2 to 3 years, right? So a CapEx cycle will definitely miss significant additions to tech stacks. So if you are not adapting and if you are not with the partner who is giving you that edge, you're going to lose out, right? So that's the reason I feel cloud-first strategy is very important today. Say, for example, AI, right? Now, with Microsoft introducing OpenAI Copilot on the Azure, if you're not on Azure, you can't use it, right? So if you were on-prem running your on-prem stuff, then you have to do a bolt-on, which is not as kind of seamless as what it is if you're on natively on cloud. So I think that's where the significant opportunity and challenge that I see is a lot of the CXOs today do not understand the journey to the cloud and its imperatives and why. So I think that's the perspective I feel I would want to probably start off with, and then maybe connect back in terms of points later on.
Sure. Asela, Dialog Axiata, together partnered Keells, or at least worked with Keells IT to take your ERP systems to the cloud, right? Without getting too jargonish about it, right? Tell us about what the experience of that was, both in terms of taking a core system to the cloud and also having the partners to do that with.
Yeah, so I think let me just start from I think where Ramesh left off. I think the journey to cloud, uh, mainly I think I see three things. One is speed, agility, and predictability. Because if you have these like what Ramesh said, right, big capex projects that you do every 5-6 years, it causes a lot of disruption to the enterprise. So what cloud gives you is a kind of a platform that is always kind of up to date because the tech refreshers are done by the cloud providers natively, and it's agnostic to the enterprise as well on most occasions, right? So your predictability becomes that much more important, especially from a finance point of view, because then you know where you're kind of heading, and the disruption to the business is also minimized. Coming back to the ERP, so we were on SAP on prem, but the real issue was then you're limited by the box, right? So it is that much that the box can allow you to expand. So as the business grows, like Ramesh talked about data being like the new oil in the modern world. So you really need something which is elastic, right? And that elasticity must be done in a way with minimal disruption to the business. So that was one of the main reasons why we wanted to actually move our ERP onto the cloud. Actually, for Dialog, if you take our ecosystem today, it's not just the ERP. If you take most of our core systems, even our analytics, I would say at least 70% of our workloads probably is on cloud at the moment. In terms of challenges, I think at the inception, it's not easy. There's a learning phase that you have to go through.
What are some of the obvious benefits of going cloud versus being on-prem on boxes? So basically on-premises, on servers versus clouds. What are the obvious benefits you see?
Yeah. So if you take if you take it as a tech stack, right? At the bottom, this infrastructure layer that you have, if you're on-prem, you have to maintain it.
Sure.
Right? You have to upgrade it. You have to care for it. You have to refresh your file systems. So there's a lot of operational work that goes on.
Sure. Right.
And one part of that is also ensuring that the relevant patches are updated in a regular interval. Because if you don't, that can cause vulnerabilities, security issues, and so on.
Sure.
Then another aspect is, like everything, nothing is permanent. These boxes kind of there's a shelf life, right? It can range from 5 years to 7 years to 9 years, whatever, right? You have to keep refreshing these things. But now when you go on cloud, what happens is all of that is kind of nicely encapsulated, and it's the cloud provider's problem, and you don't have to worry about it.
It's masked from you, yeah. It's masked from you, so you don't see that. It's
It's all happening, but it's just you don't see that, and there is
it's not your headache.
Essentially no downtime for having to do that.
Correct.
Is downtime an issue in organizations?
Of course,
yes, increasing.
Of course, because your business gets disrupted, right?
Because something now, say if you look at about say even 10 years back, most of our businesses were 8 to 5, right? At max, maybe 8 to 6. Today, it's 24/7, right? Most business banks now say, you can't say even a customer who wants to log into internet banking at 3 in the morning, it's not off hours, right? So today, uptime is actually we're talking about 99.5 minimum for most businesses. And we were happy with 99% or even lesser than that, 95%. About 15 years back, right? So I think that's the whole kind of impact is, if you were to look at the cost of downtime to your business in the equation of your cloud journey and the economics, you will definitely see a different picture.
Right.
Yeah, actually, just to add to that, if you were on-prem, and if you were to cater to a scenario where you want to down one end of your, let's say, data center, meaning you will now have to have like a active or active passive,
cluster,
like a disaster recovery site, right? The cost then would be, like Ramesh correctly pointed out, you will be actually investing almost double because you have to have now a replica running, right? Because you can't otherwise do this patchwork while the system is live.
And that's to cover the 10%.
Correct.
Off downtime
90
that you would
correct.
otherwise have on the main system.
Correct.
Yeah.
So in any kind of financial equation, when someone is evaluating cloud, you have to take these things into consideration. Because
Exactly.
sometimes you don't think about it because you talk, okay, do we need a DR? But then from a compliance point of view,
DR is
No, that's a good
disaster
point.
recovery, right?
It's a good point because I think a lot of the time I have seen customers evaluating, okay, I can do with this amount of service, but the uptime is not the same, but cloud is costing me so much.
Yes.
But I said, if you really compare cloud at 99.95 versus your on-prem, you have to have a cluster. So you have to actually at least take this plus another at least 60% in the TCO equation. A lot of the people don't do that.
And TCOs, you shouldn't.
You have to define that term.
Yeah, the
Total cost of
total
ownership.
cost of ownership, TCO, the TCO calculation. You can't just look at it as only the investment of your first year, right? Then for sure your on-prem is not going to be viable. You said move everything to cloud. But ideally you should be looking at least 3 to 5 years, because anyway hardware refresh cycle will
Upgrades,
happen on-prem
AMCs, yeah.
every 5 years or every 3 years minimum. Your hardware refresh cycle on-prem will happen. So you have to take that into account in that
I
cost
think if
equation.
I draw a parallel, Samitra, you take your electricity at home, right? How many of us have generators, right? Now we say, okay, there might be power cuts, maybe, 3 hours a month, and you invest on a genset which is there, and you have backup fuel and stuff. But that is the exact thing that we're talking about in terms of if you're running on generator all by yourself, right? That generator won't be enough. You will need to have a full capacity generator to service your house plus a backup.
Backup generator.
Right? So that is more like a private cloud. So CEB is like a public cloud, right? So if the uptime, the CEB can say, I will not have a downtime, and if you come and ask me, okay, pay me a premium, I might, because it might be cheaper. So that is exactly the comparison about private and public cloud. It's a utility. So you don't have to worry about anything. You say, I want to consume storage, I want to consume compute. This is it. Give me this capacity.
What was the conversation like at Dialog when this idea for moving to the cloud was mooted? What were the hurdles that were relatively easy to overcome, and what were the points that required more rigorous approach in your recollection?
Yeah, I think the technology part was a relatively easy conversation to have because, you can explain it, right?
And you are a tech-based company.
Correct. But I think translating that into the financials is where you have an issue, because you need to now bring on board, obviously your CEO, CFO, the procurement guys. You need to bring them on board. And also, because if it's legacy, the other problem that you have is if you don't know the technology also, right? So the learning curve initially, you have to take like baby steps. It's not that you suddenly come and say, now I'm going to put everything on cloud, because your architectures, all of those things kind of have to go hand in hand. But the real, I think, issue is about how do you convince the non-technical people in terms of understanding what is this about and how does it translate in terms of the benefit or the outcome to the organization.
And how do you help quantify this, Ramesh? And you know at your board, your CEO needs to be convinced by quantifiable stuff.
Yes.
You cannot be vague about, okay, my downtime now is not an issue, or we don't need a backup system. You need to put numbers on the table. How does an organization like JKIT, how can you help chief technology officers, for instance, like Asela, help quantify this?
So what we do normally, Sanjay, is we do an assessment, right? Cloud migration assessment, and we also look at in terms of your current infrastructure, what is the lifetime which is kind of left, and your capacity in terms of what you're trying to achieve, right? So couple of the times, I think it's about understanding the business strategy first, not putting tech first, right? Understanding where is the business trying to go and what are their key priorities, and then aligning IT to that, and then seeing how a cloud-first strategy will give them the agility and flexibility he was talking about,
Right.
and the elasticity.
Sure.
Right. So I remember one of these conversations with one of the boards. Same question got asked. Why should we have a data center? We have invested in all of these things. Why should I even look at cloud? Right. I said, when you say your data center, can you tell me what is your total cost of ownership? He said, servers, this thing. Yeah, I think I see if we can do that. I said, what about the people? What about the power? What about the cooling? Right? What about the redundancies of all of that? What about the security? Right? I said, no, you might be having a safe at home, but where do you keep your jewelry? Is it the safe at home or safe at the bank? Is it safe at the bank? So I said, the same logic. Because we know safe at the home is suboptimal. It's not as protected as safe at the bank. Similarly, public cloud, the investment which goes in terms of security, cooling, redundancies, power redundancies, all of that is huge. Now, we don't have power redundancies in most of the customers' data centers, right? So, if you really look at what goes into the plumbing of a public cloud data center and the infrastructure, we are nowhere close to any of those public infrastructures, right? So, I think that's where I feel the cost economics, then when you tell them that these are differences and build up the business case, it becomes very obvious. So we take a very systematic approach of building a business case and then saying why this, right? Then obviously there will be debate about which tech and why and what size and all of that. But the bigger challenge is the alignment between the business and IT.
Sure. Right. And this is speed, agility, and predictability. That's how you referred to the benefits of the cloud. Now, Asela, now that you've done it and somebody is asking you, okay, so Asela, the investment is now quantifiable, it's there. Are you necessarily benefiting with greater speed, greater agility, and greater predictability?
For sure. Because, like I said earlier, I don't want to mention very specific cases, but in the telco industry, for example, you have certain scenarios where you will suddenly get volume. And
peaks.
Peaks. And on those situations, there have been instances in the past where when we were on-prem, because you couldn't scale, right?
There's too much demand on the server at one time.
Yeah. Correct. No. If you want, you can scale, but you will have to now buy 100 boxes
just to cater to that small.
It doesn't make economic sense, right? But with the technology that is there on cloud, it enables us to kind of go up and down as we want. And another example that I can say is that if you take our analytics, Entirety, I think we moved it about a little bit more than a year ago, Entirety onto cloud. And we have over probably 100 to 200 source systems ingesting data. And in the past, we used to have issues because of the volume, because you have to understand the business, smack at 8 o'clock in the morning, they'll need all their dashboards, reports, everything done, right? So all the data that gets ingested from these systems, and it has to get processed and nicely, massaged and be ready for consumption. But when we were on-prem, we used to struggle to live up to that expectation. Yeah. Whereas now, hardly get any kind of failure like that because this elasticity really helps.
I think maybe a couple of the extensions to that. Now, those, if you remember, when we had email on-prem, we had to limit mailboxes to 50 MB. Right? And every time we say, delete email, delete attachments, your email box is clogged. Now, no one talks about it. Yeah. Right? It's like an elastic mailbox, 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte. As long as you're willing to pay for it and you can justify it, it's allowed. Right? So I think that is a simple example I can say in the last 15 years, how collaboration has evolved. Right? Now, if you were on-prem just doing email, you won't be able to do Teams. During COVID. You would have been able to do half the things that we were able to do to navigate COVID, we wouldn't have been able to do.
Right. Just touching on that point in terms of the tech and the evolution, what cloud will enable you is, Ramesh touched on all these Gen AI stuff, right? You won't be able to do Gen AI if you don't embrace cloud, because those LLMs and all to run, you can't, because the investments are massive. and it's only these big tech companies who can invest in those. Of course, now the likes of us will kind of piggyback on top of it. But if you don't embrace cloud, it's like an almost no.
Ramesh, so you took John Keells Holdings on this journey. I think as an organization, John Keells had the vision to start going to the cloud in 2013, as you say, right? And when, for instance, COVID hit, it was many years after that, right? Could it have been imaginable for you of being on premises, on servers versus cloud? Could you have, as a business, gone through that period had you not been on that?
I probably would have lost my job because I think, no way. Because that says it all. Because I remember a lot of senior executives came back and spoke to me after thinking, now we understand why you did what you did. Right? Because if we weren't, I think the kind of spread of businesses and the employees we had all over the island, we wouldn't have. Right? All we needed was internet connection. Now even we dropped the 4G routers to people's homes because the internet connection wasn't good.
Okay.
That's all we had to do. Extend the internet pipe, they were up and running. Right? I think that's where I feel sometimes you have to also put yourself in that extreme position, because this is exactly what I said. Because if you're in a purpose-built data center, you always think, I'm going to come to office, I'll be able to come to office. Right? So the what if scenario and the BCP never gets costed into your proposition of your TCO.
BCP.
Business continuity planning. Right? Because now he spoke of disaster recovery. So disaster recovery is for to ensure business continuity. So if you don't, that's what I'm saying. The business case, we take that whole thing. What is the downtime your business can withstand, right? This year, the next 5 years, so that you got to then take the baby steps to get there, right? Now, say for example, take Sri Lanka for example. If you say Sri Lanka is expanding and we have a Hambantota zone and there is no highway, it'll take 5 hours or 7 hours to go from Colombo port to Hambantota port. Nobody is going to go to Hambantota port. Now with the highway, it's maybe shrunk to 3 hours. So that's the whole elasticity that we are talking about from a physical infrastructure, which cloud also affords, because it's about you wanting something is readily available. All you need is internet pipe.
And technology is evolving fast. We've seen what's happened with large language models very recently and the sort of speed of uptake, right? Not just among consumers, but businesses now realize the potential in general of AI, right? Is a cloud-based infrastructure one that is adaptable and scalable to meet new requirements that pop up, very fast, come around the horizon very fast?
Because that'll be the only way. I think maybe Asela also can chip in, because today, for example, now if you look at Elon Musk, I think is building homes which can be transported, right? Right? Because the whole concept I'm just saying is, today you want mobility. You don't want to get stuck in one place. Now you have an idea. Now I have a smart idea saying, with this set of data, I can do this. Okay, I power the LLM up and try this out. It doesn't. So then I want to turn it off. So it's a matter of that 5 days or 30 days I have used these services. That's the cost of that idea. But imagine if I had to invest capex and build that whole data center to run an LLM, and then the project doesn't take off, right? So your power to innovate, experiment won't be there, because board is not going to sanction that.
Sure.
Right? Now here you say, okay, 30 days, how much? $1,000, fine, go do it.
You can fail fast if you need.
Exactly. Fail fast, fail safe. So this gives you much more comfort for even entrepreneurs and tech guys within the organization, together with the business, to innovate at a higher speed and even fail safe.
Correct. And on the topic of LLMs, so now the tech is available where these Gen AI models, you have the option of kind of connecting. You try a use case on one. If that doesn't suit you, now you switch to a different LLM. So you're not really stuck to a particular cloud provider, particular LLM. A particular cloud provider will have a framework which can give you multiple LLMs, right? And those LLMs, depending on the sophistication that you need, like Ramesh said, the cost will vary. So depending on your use case, you can
also you can collaborate. So there may be another guy who had done this. You can use his LLM and pay for that use.
Correct.
Right? So the collaboration becomes much more easier. Co-innovation becomes much more easier. So the cloud lends itself to build that ecosystem that I always talk about, which is platform-based, where you don't build purpose-built infrastructure and things. If you can consume it, why build it? Right? So if someone else has built it, you just want to consume it, why do you want to build it from scratch?
Sure.
Right? So that whole proposition is there, but a lot of the businesses today still are very archaic in their thinking, saying, I want to build and own this. For what reason? Right? I think that's where I feel the business leaders and CXOs have to think differently. Today, collaboration doesn't take competitiveness out of you. Right? Just because whether you use power from Leco or somewhere else or CEB doesn't give you a competitive advantage. There's a utility. Right? So today I feel technology, even LLM will become a utility. But what is the use case you use it for and what benefits you drive is going to be the differentiator.
And your focus then can really go on to
use cases, value.
building innovative things rather than worrying about the plumbing and whatever that is underneath.
Right. Asela Axiata, of which Dialog is a part, is a global business, right? How does your journey to the cloud, and you said you're about 70% on cloud, 30% on premise, maybe currently. How does that resonate with the group? Does that align strongly with where the group wants to go? And has that helped you as a unit here become better aligned with what the group wants to do?
Yes, I think for sure. I think if you take all the opcos in the Axiata group, pretty much everyone has a cloud first strategy, and in fact we have a very focused collection of all the CIOs actually working in tandem towards this cloud first strategy, and we try to leverage on the collective power, so to speak, when even sometimes talking to some of the major cloud providers. So that alignment is there. But I think one thing that I also want to highlight, while we all kind of talk good about cloud, you have to also understand and kind of keep it in check, so to speak, because cloud is also like a tap, right? So you have a tap. The tap is on, water is running, and the meter is running. So it's a more OPEX model as opposed to CAPEX.
A CAPEX heavy model, right?
So if anyone is embarking on a cloud strategy, in tandem to that, hand in hand to that, it's very important to have a FinOps, right? Financial operations.
To manage it,
to manage it. And you have to have, of course, the cloud providers, they give tools. So you have visibility pretty much almost on a near real-time basis in terms of how your usage fluctuates, how the cost fluctuates. You can build dashboards using that. But if the organization is also not geared, I mean, Ramesh touched on the people part. If you don't have a strong FinOps practice, it can completely go out of control. But if you actually put in a very strong practice, it can actually save even more money
than you initially planned.
Because you're always on the ball, right? And you can really reap the benefits of.
It's like the utility, right? At home, you can leave all your lights on. Or only keep the lights which you want and knock off the rest. So in cloud is the same, right? Because if you turn on all the services, you're going to pay for it because whether you like it or not, even if you're not consuming it, you kept it on, right? So there are auto scripts where you can say, turn on this service at this time, turn it off at this time. So that is where expertise sometimes lack, because people sometimes take it too easy. The cloud is easy and I can do it. Right? I think this is where I think what Asela touched was a key point, that you need to have the collaborative effort with the partner also to ensure that knowledge is getting transferred. Maybe with the progression of 1 or 2 years, you will build that internal capacity. But it's important to get those KPIs also aligned.
And along the same lines, you have to also engage the business and show them that
value.
Your cost is this and your cost driver is this.
Right.
So say for example, if someone is saying, simple example, right? Someone says, I want to see my last 1 year history of transactions, right? That is 1 year of storage. as opposed to someone wanting to see the last 30 days.
Right.
So the question has to be asked, you're spending X amount of dollars for 1 year of data. Why do you need 1 year of data? Is it really material in terms of your decision making process? Why you need 1 year of data? Can you do it 30 days? So 30 days cost is this, 1 year cost is this.
Exactly.
And then you park the cost back to the business, because if they don't feel the pinch, ideally, for them it will be like 1 year, it's okay. You can't have that scenario. So it's important always to engage the business and make it transparent, because the cloud allows you it to be made transparent and available for all the stakeholders to see.
That's the business case, part of the business case as well. Because a lot of the time, I think what he said is true. Business is agnostic to what happens in the data center, right? When it's on-prem. Okay, I want 5 years of data. Someone goes for CapEx. They will justify why I need it for 5 years for regulatory or whatever. It gets sanctioned. But the question is, no one asked how frequently have you gone and used this data. Now here you will have this matrix. So you have stored this data, have you retrieved it? So all of those are there. So then you can maybe start with 5 years. Then you can say, maybe I don't need, I can crash it 3 years. You save that 2 year storage. In CapEx you wouldn't.
Right? Yeah, you can't take it back,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. So here, whatever decisions you make will have an immediate impact in the outcome, financially and business-wise, right? So I think that's the flexibility and elasticity that you're getting.
Gentlemen, you've done a wonderful job sort of putting perspective around what advantages a cloud strategy will bring to an organization. As we wrap up, any final thoughts?
So if you ask me, I feel today any company who is starting up, they should look at cloud as the only option, not even think of doing anything on-prem. And who is on-prem must fast-track the journey to the cloud, because the moment that you get to cloud, you're going to have a plethora of options opening out, which is going to accelerate your business.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I fully endorse what Ramesh said. The only thing is you have to make sure that all the enablers, I think that is around that strategy, especially about people and training.
Processes,
I think is very important, because if you don't have the right skill sets, it can get into a little bit of a not so good
muddy water,
not so good situation. But fully endorse what Ramesh said. I think you should embrace it and go, because that is where the technology is heading. And of course, there are options. Like I said, there's public cloud, there are private, cloud providers in Sri Lanka, local data centers which offer these services. So you should leverage on that rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. Yeah.
And this is not a one pipe, one switch strategy. It can be customized to meet your needs. So this is not one, you're not buying one server somewhere.
No.
It can be a solution.
Yeah,
it could be multi. So say for example, today you can have part of your thing hosted in AWS, some in GCP, some in Azure, something on your on-prem, and still you can create a monolithic layer underlying thing, technology is available, right? Like things like Red Hat OpenShift. You can run your payloads across, and you can move from AWS to Google or Azure. So depending on your business priority, that architecture can be put together, right? So that flexibility is there.
So that business priority, if you translate it again into technology, so for example, if you take our ERP, the decision point or inflection point was when we had to upgrade. Until then, it was on-prem, right? Because that movement also is a disruption. When you move from on-prem to cloud is also disruption. So ideally, with the business strategy, the IT strategy must align then in terms of, if you are having a cloud-first strategy, what are those inflection points which you can take a logical stance to say, move it there. So don't take a stance saying, I'm now moving to cloud just because it's cloud, I'm moving there. No. You have to come in terms of the life cycle of whatever that asset. At that point, you take a conscious call to move it. Now, having said that, if workloads keep moving to cloud, and if you have some of your other critical workloads on-prem, these two have to start to communicate with each other. And if they are like very low latency type of transactions, that can impact your customer experience. So you have to think of all these things in terms of what is the right decision-making point in terms of moving it to cloud. But strategy must be always cloud first.
So on that note, Asela Perera, Ramesh Shanmuganathan, thank you for joining Echelon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.